Just going to give it one more minute. Just got a couple people checking in. We want everybody to be able to come here without disturbing the meeting. How do we look out there, Dan? Okay. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Would everybody join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Everybody have a seat. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. This town meeting is to consider the appropriation of funds to the Board of Ed. At this point in time, we will elect a moderator. Do I have any nominations for moderator? Yes?
I'd like to nominate Sean Hathorne to be moderator.
And your name and address is?
Debbie Brooks, 21 Crest Drive.
Do I have a second? Rosa?
Yes, Rosa.
Okay. Do I have any other nominations? Not hearing any. Do all those in favor of electing Sean as moderator say aye, please? Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? No. Sean, it's your meeting. Thank you for doing this.
Hey, thank you. Welcome, everyone. I would like to ask now the town clerk to read the call of the meeting.
Town of Brookfield, warning, notice of special town meeting. The legal voters of the town of Brookfield and those entitled to vote therein are hereby warned and notified to meet at the Brookfield Town Hall, 100 Pocono Road, Brookfield, Connecticut, on Tuesday, February 13th, 2018, at 7 p.m. in Meeting Room 133 for the purpose to wit: 1. To consider and to vote upon a resolution to approve a special appropriation in the amount of $470,500 to fund the extraordinary special education cost increase for fiscal year 2017-18 from the unassigned general fund. 2. To do any and all things which may be legally necessary to appropriate to accomplish the above named purposes. Dated at Brookfield, Connecticut, this 5th day of February 2018, Steve C. Dunn, Susan D. Slater, Harry Shaker, Selectmen of the Town of Brookfield.
Thank you, Andrea. At this time, I'd like to call for a reading of the resolution by our town attorney.
Good evening. Town of Brookfield, special town meeting, February 13, 2018. Resolution. Be it resolved that a special appropriation in the amount of $470,500 to fund the extraordinary special education cost increase for fiscal year 2017-18 from the unassigned general fund is hereby authorized and approved.
Mr. Dunn, was there anything that you wanted to address before we have a presentation?
No, I think we could just go right to the presentation.
Okay. We have a presentation by Board of Education Vice Chairman, Mr. Bob Belden.
I'm not sure whether to face you guys or face these guys. So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to face these guys. Is that all right?
Yeah, as long as you're using the microphone.
Presentation. Can you all hear me? I tend to have a big voice, so if you can't hear me, raise your hand, wave at me, do whatever you can do. The Board of Ed Chairman, Mrs. Sturm, is out of the state today, so she's asked me to do this presentation representing the entire Board of Ed, who are here in the front row with me this evening. Before I start, I'd like to introduce a couple of key members of the staff because I may call on them tonight, this evening. Our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. John Burrill, is here in the front row. Our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Maureen Ruby, is on the side. Our Director of Special Education, Dr. Christine Sapala, is next to her. And our Finance Director, Mr. Ken Post, is here. I may not be able to answer every single question people may have, but I will call on them as necessary. But I'm hoping that the presentation I give you this evening is relatively self-explanatory. Let me start with a little bit of background on special education, because not everybody is deep into what that means. Special education is the general term that we use for the educational processes that provide support to our neediest students. These are children who are in our schools that need varying support. It might be difficult, complicated support. It might be almost impossible to provide support. But what we do under state law, under federal law, and because we're a good school system, is we bring together a lot of different supports. That might be special education teachers, it might be paraprofessionals, it might be other professionals like speech pathologists, psychologists, social workers, and occupational and physical therapists. As a school district, we bring that together based on what's called an individualized educational plan, or an IEP. And each student gets an IEP who has needs. We identify the students, we work with the parents, with the student, with the teachers, with the administration, and Dr. Sapala, who leads our special education program for the schools, actually orchestrates the whole program of doing IEPs and then making sure that we have the supports in place for those students. In Brookfield, we have about 14% of our students have an IEP. That's 356 students out of our roughly 2,600 students in the district. That is about normal for a town of our size. In fact, is about the state average for the number of children who have an IEP. I'll tell you, some of those are relatively narrow in scope. Might be complicated, but they're narrower in scope, and some are extraordinarily complex. And unfortunately, because of the state laws, we can't talk about them. In fact, as a board, we can't even know about them. All we can know about is about the general trends. It's a very tightly held, highly privacy, legally controlled process where we don't actually talk about individual students as a board. And Dr. Sapala rightfully reminds us all the time, I can't tell you anything about that because it's important for us to maintain privacy for children who need this kind of support. The majority of the support that we do give to our children is handled in district. We actually do a lot of that with the staff that we have here in Brookfield. But there are occasionally instances where we have to send children out of district in order to get the support they need. Those are in two broad categories. One is for programs that we don't have in our district. The most important of which is what we call the 18 to 21-year-old program, where the children, we are legally obligated to provide an educational environment for those students who need it until age 21. We don't have a program in Brookfield that is designated for the kids of that age, but we do have partnerships with Newtown and Danbury, and we've ganged together as 3 local districts to provide that district. And of course, Brookfield pays its share of that support for those children as we send children to that. The second, and probably the more important piece for this evening's discussion, is what we call special outplacements. These are children where we just don't have the capability to handle their unique situation here in Brookfield. And in those instances, we actually have, there are specialized programs throughout the state of Connecticut, and occasionally we send children out of the state of Connecticut that can handle those kinds of cases. Between those two categories, we had budgeted for 18 students. Out of the 356 that we had, we were able to handle all but 18 here in-house. So that's a good thing. That means the kids stay home, they're not getting on a bus and going on a long trip, and we're doing, I think, better for them by having them managed here locally. So let's talk about what the problem and why are we here tonight. By the way, the costs for the out-of-placement districts can be extraordinarily high. I mean, on average, it's $100,000 to send a child out of district, and I think we've had as high as $150,000. So they can be, it's a big deal when you get out of placement situations. So if we could go to the next chart. This summer and in through the fall, we had, I call it the oh my God moment. where we had a number of instances where we had the 18 that we had budgeted, it grew from 18 to 30 in terms of the number of children that needed to go out of district. There were a lot of different reasons for that. Some of it was families who were moving into town who had an existing IEP where the child was being sent to a out-of-district outplacement type of program, and by law we inherit that IEP, and that child is now on Brookfield's nickel. We've had other families that have moved into town where the decision was taken for a child to go. But there's other legal issues, DCF placements, legal settlements, what we call unilateral placements, and all of them, for a whole variety of reasons, we had more kids being outplaced. I'll tell you, we went through the numbers again earlier today. The growth of 12, it was 9 of the 12 growth were kids who were in special outplacement, the very expensive ones, and there were 3 more in the 18 to 21 program, which actually are relatively inexpensive. So there was, the real driver was the specials, and the cost exposure to the town was $870,000 because of these additional outplacements. At the same time, we went and did a bottoms-up view of the professional support we had in district, and we found out that we were under budgeted by $195,000 on the in-district, and for a variety of reasons. Some things were missed, but these were programs such as the high school life skills program, special reading skills, speech and language professional services, and ASD, or the School for the Deaf. We actually have some outplacement services there. They were just under budgeted. So we were looking at a problem of a little over $1 million. And $1 million in a school district like ours is a very tough nut to absorb. So as a Board of Ed, we came together and we said, we have to figure out what we can do. Let's see what we can cover with other things that we can squeeze and, you know, find ways to cover that. And we actually found among about $595,000, $594,500 that we took out of our existing budget. And I'll show you the details of that in a little bit. But quite frankly, that we couldn't squeeze the budget any further to deal with this surprise of number of kids that were in the school. So we approached the Board of Selectmen to ask for this special appropriation that we're here to talk about tonight. So if you look at the timeline, we started this in late October. Our Business and Facilities Committee talked about it. We had a formal Board of Education review in November, wrote to the Board of Selectmen in late November. It went to the Board of Finance for review in early December, where we then had 2 different meetings with the Board of Finance and with Mr. Dunn, who was at those meetings, to talk through some of the specifics and to have lots of give and take. They sent it back from the Board of Finance to the Board of Selectmen for a formal recommendation, which the Board of Selectmen did in January. Then that went to the Board of Finance in January, and then we're here tonight for the town meeting. It's a process to go through getting special appropriation done, and this has been exercised by all 3 boards as best we can work our way through it. And I will tell you, the amount we're talking about tonight is $470,000. We debated going as low as about 420, I think was the number, maybe 400, and as high as 600, right, trying to figure out what the right balance was. And the Board of Finance really exercised that at their meeting in late January. If you go to the next one. So here's the overall situation. Our exposure was a little over $1 million, $1,065,000. I'm going to skip the top number because that's kind of the result, but we had some staffing savings from rotations of teachers and other staff, where we actually were able to pull some savings out through hiring people at a lower rate of pay than their predecessor. We did some things on insurance management that were that are novel, right? We actually implemented a Medicaid reimbursement program, and we actually worked with our bargaining units to actually sign on to an amendment of the insurance plan that allowed us to save $55,000. So between $50,000 from Medicaid reimbursement and $55,000 from renegotiated medical benefits, that saved $105,000. We had a temporary vacancy that we didn't fill. And we, there's days we say we wish we could have filled that, but we said, look, this is a problem this year, so let's not fill that job and take that savings and put it toward this. And then we had to implement a tactical spending freeze because we knew the town was not going to be able to cover all of this problem. It's just hard to find money of this magnitude. So we instituted tactical spending freeze in the areas of books, supplies, technology, and repairs. Those are hard to do. But I'll tell you, we started that freeze in the summer when Governor Malloy was bandying about the significant cuts to our local budgets. We had actually instituted a freeze at that time, and what we basically have done is continued that. Those are hard. I'll tell you, that's actually where the debate with the Board of Finance was do we really want to do that? But in the end, the town only had so much money they could apply to this. So it was a decision jointly taken by the board that we're going to do that freeze and that we would ask for $470,500 from the town as a special appropriation. So that's the mix of the actions that we took. Some of those we took early. The $195,000 of under budgeted items we went after early. So that's part of it. It was almost all done out of the staffing savings, and the remainder of that has been part of the discussion we've had with the other two boards. So that's where we are tonight. The Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen have both approved $470,000. We, as a Board of Education, we seek the town's approval, which is why we're here tonight for this special appropriation. Mr. Dunn, would you like to add anything on the funding side?
Yeah, I think there was some discussion and consideration of the fact that the town, at this point in time, never wants to touch our general fund. As you know, 2 years ago, we discovered we were missing $3.3 million of our $5.2 million general fund. That was a huge hit to the town. It caused an immediate ratings review by Moody's, and they did drop us 1 rating. We've worked very hard to get our general fund balance back up. And a general fund balance is there to protect you in emergencies. If you have an expenditure or a problem, an air conditioner blows, a generator blows, you have an immediate expense that you can't cover under your budget. So in this case, not a lot of people know this, but we switched from being a self-insured for medical to going to the Connecticut partnership. When you are self-insured in medical, you have to pre-fund the possible claims that may come against you. And then once you leave self-insured, you have to leave those funds in the account for a year for any claims that come in after you switched. We've done that. And that year has passed. So we have $481,000 in our self-insured fund. And we also, as we go through this process of winding down the self-insured, we happen to get a check for $61,000 from our insurance company for rebates on medical prescriptions that we were supposed to get more money than they initially allocated to us. Those will continue for probably another year, but the vast majority of those Cigna payments have been made. We expect small checks. We got a check last week for $8. Hey, $8 is $8, right? So when we look at this, the Board of Selectmen talked about this, Harry and Sue and I, very, very carefully. The original request was $630,500. And the Board of Ed was very clear and came to us and said, listen, we have this $160,000 that we can hold off spending, repairing things, not buying some supplies, really digging into materials and books. We don't like to do that, but we won't be affecting our core ability to educate our children. and I think the Board of Selectmen agreed with me. We said, okay, instead of paying the full $630,500 shortfall, let's put up $470,500. We think that's a reasonable amount of money for a special appropriation to be made. And interestingly enough, though not related, we're getting $481,000 and $61,000 back into the general fund from Cigna and from the self-insured. So the general fund will remain when we make this payment. If this town meeting approves it, the general fund will actually be going up. Not as much as we'd like, but it will be going up. So I think that the town can afford this payment. I think, given it's a special education cost, we have to support all our children. I think the board agrees with me. And this is an extraordinary circumstance. And I think it's something that we need to do. Thank you. Sean?
Okay. May I have a motion to adopt this resolution?
Would you state your name and address? Sorry.
Is there any discussion?
There will be.
May I have a second?
Murphy, 47 Arapahoe Road.
Okay. Now, this motion is on the floor for discussion. We will hold public comment. I do ask that everyone keep their initial comment to 3 minutes. I do have the timers here, so it is well visible in yellow against this backdrop. Anyone that does want to have an extra round, we will allow anyone that wants to come up one more time after everyone has had a first chance to speak, okay? Everyone, as you approach the podium, please state your name and your address very slowly and very clearly so we can get it on the record, okay?
Okay. Thank you. I'll face them.
Good evening.
Your name, ma'am, and address, please?
Olga Rothman-Weitzman, 3 Hearthstone Drive, Brookfield, Connecticut, obviously. When I found out about this meeting tonight, I said I have to speak because I am a special education para-educator at Wisconsin. I don't know what to say. I didn't know what I'm going to talk about. And then last night, someone shared this college essay with me, written by a former special education student. I spoke with him today, and he gave me permission to use his college essay. He's a high school senior, and his proud mom is sitting over there, Mrs. Damo. In this world, and especially in high school, I see numerous people being excluded from activities based on their abilities. I would like to see that changed. I would like to include everyone, regardless of their abilities and disabilities. In spite of advances and opportunities, there remains a huge disparity. Everyone has feelings that must be taken into consideration, and the answer is increased inclusive programs. For several years of both middle school and high school, I participated in an after-school activity program called Unified Theater, which breaks down barriers between youth by school-based performing arts. Young people of all backgrounds, with and without disabilities, come together as equals to put on a production. The production is written, directed, and performed by the students themselves. Currently, there are over 60 schools across the country that have this program. I would like that number to greatly increase, allowing more kids with abilities and disabilities to perform together. So where does one start developing programs like this? More inclusive programs should be started in middle school. Here, differences are more recognized among students. People begin to exclude other people and form cliques. Providing unified events at the middle school age would bring people together, help them become more accommodating to each other, and help them gain a better understanding of each other. Besides Unified Theater, other after-school programs like this are individual sports, music, and art. These activities are positive and important. They play on the strengths and abilities and disabilities of kids with special needs while providing them with the socialization necessary to grow and feel appreciated. In order to make this happen, educators, both in regular education and special education, need to
Ma'am,
provide
I'm so sorry. I have to cut you off to be fair to everyone else. I'm so sorry.
the end.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Name and address, ladies?
Mary Eileen Walters and Caroline Walters, 104 Obtuse Road South.
Thank you.
This is Caroline.
Hi.
Okay. Caroline thought maybe if she showed you some of the reading that she's doing, that it would help people to see a child who does benefit greatly from our special education program. Are you ready, Carol? Okay. What's the name of your book?
This, the, and go.
Jill Grills. Okay.
The likes to go.
Good.
The likes to work hard.
Can everyone understand? Okay. You're doing a great job, Carol.
The likes to go fast.
Okay.
The door likes to go.
Chicken. Here you go, Carol. Go ahead. Jill.
The
Stand up. Go ahead. Hurry up. Time's almost out. Go.
door likes to go hot dogs.
Okay.
The likes to go fun.
Last page.
I was wondering.
One more. Go ahead.
Or this one.
Does
Does you
not.
not like to spot? Oops.
So that's Caroline
This is Zippy.
Caroline is in third grade at Huckleberry, and she has a great group of teachers and educators and therapists. And as you can see, a face of one of the children who benefits greatly from the special education department. I hope the whole town will see what a great job and that we definitely need these finances. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make comment?
Hi, my name's Carmine Rossicano, 6 Big Buck Lane. I'd like to say that, first of all, my wife was a special education teacher in New Milford for over 30 years. And I understand the importance of this situation and the costs associated with special ed. My question has to do more with the contingency fund that was included in the town's budget last year of $702,000. I'm asking why can't we use the contingency fund of $702,000 as to use for this one-time town funding of $470,500, so that we'll still have some money in the contingency fund, and we won't touch the reserve account, which we really spent a lot of time trying to build up. Second question is, what are the actual expenses to date versus our budget? I've heard what the school is doing and the actions they've taken. What is the town's position or side of the budget is, and can the funds that are in the town budget, if we're under budget, be somewhat used to offset this one-time town funding of $470,500? Third question is more as a general question, because I see the Board of Ed is already asking for a 5% increase in next year's budget, having to do with special education. And I was really concerned about what we're doing in that area to address the situation and the continued cost increases that the town is going to be facing next year and into the future. These are very expensive, as was pointed out by Bob. $100,000 is the minimum for a student. So, with 12 students coming in, that's another $120,000. I'm just wondering if, in fact, we need to reassess what we're doing with special education and really go in and address the situation in a fundamental way so we can ensure the kids have the funds and the programs necessary to help them grow, but without really being an overall financial burden on the town residents and taxpayers who have seen their mill rates and taxes go up significantly over the past few years.
Thank you. Mr. Dunn.
Steve Dunn, 24 Lindenwood Drive. I'd like to just quickly address a couple of the issues. If anybody wants to see exactly what we're doing with our contingency fund, you can go on our website and look at the last Board of Finance meeting where we outlined exactly what we're using that for. A big hunk of it is being used for the shortfall in grants that the state is giving us. We do have increased expenses in our medical insurance, and all the detail is there. The contingency fund is not fully used up, but a good portion of it will be. The second question that Mr. Rossitano raised is a good one. Why not use your existing budget and take from every department? We do not want to affect what we're doing for the town. If our departments are very careful and do have a savings at the end of the year, that money would flow to the general fund. But at this point in time, I think it's important not to hinder the use of any of our funds for our departments so that they can do their jobs. We think we're going to end up with a little bit of money left from our salt and sand reserve. I don't want to take that money today because I'm not sure I'm not going to need it. So I think you can only do that when you get to the end of the year and see where each department has ended up. And if they're under budget, then those funds flow to the general fund. On the special education question, I would leave that up to others. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to bring up Dr. Sapala, but broadly, we recognize that this is an issue in terms of number of children who come in that are outsourced. We want to bring them back in to our own thing because you save transportation costs off the top, and we actually give them a better environment, I think, than putting a kid on a bus for an hour and a half and then having them go somewhere else away from friends and family. So it's a hard balancing act, and so I'm just going to let Dr. Sapala talk a little bit about some of the work we've kicked off.
Right, sure.
Many of you haven't had a chance to meet her. She's relatively new to the district, and we are so lucky to have her. So.
Maybe take the mic.
So to respond, I think, initially to part of your question, we don't anticipate for next year that there be continuing increased costs. So I think we have this increase this year, and we expect that will be, the total cost will be about the same for our outplacement tuition and transportation for next year. We are looking at trends in terms of students who are requiring services and who are requiring really these specialized services that we can't provide in district. So part of that is taking a look at our program development. We certainly are discussing that. We're talking about developing a task force in order to do that. We have students who are exhibiting right now really significant social emotional concerns, which is a trend not just in Brookfield and not just in Connecticut and the region. There are other districts that are facing this right now, but also nationally. So students with anxiety or depression or things like that we need to be able to increase our capacity for, to be able to provide appropriate services for them here. But we are being very cost conscious and careful about developing programs so that we aren't outplacing every student who has those types of needs.
else that wanted to make public comment? Yes.
Hi, Betsy McIlvain, 127 Long Meadow Hill. I'm here to tell you that as a non-parent, I've never had kids in your school system, but I view this, as every other piece of the town budget, as an investment in the town. This is how you grow your services. This is how you attract people to your town. This is how we need to keep the town up to date in everything. So I urge you all to vote yes for this, because it is just another piece of investment in what we're doing in Brookfield. Thank you.
Was there anyone else that wanted to give public comment before we close discussion tonight? Once, twice, 3 times? Okay. We will consider discussion, questions, and comments closed for the evening. I think everyone received a ticket on their way in this evening. I will
Start
ask.
with a voice vote first?
Want to do a voice vote first?
Yeah, I would do that first,
Almost
and if
100
it's
people.
clear. I'm sorry?
There's almost 100 people.
We don't have to count them for this. It's not a bond. So if it's clearly...
Yeah, if it's clear.
Okay. Do we need a motion to do a hand vote? Okay. Got it. Okay.
You wanna read-
Motion by... Second? Okay.
Discussion.
Any discussion on the hand vote?
I just got a question, is that the normal procedure?
Yep.
Or why is this given out as?
Well, there's a variety of procedures. If it's a close vote, then we would possibly go to the tickets and actually have people write their
You're
ballots.
presuming what the vote's gonna be.
The motion on the floor is
Have a hand vote.
for a hand vote. So we're about to vote on that motion that's on the floor. Ultimately, if there's a vote on this issue, on the actual resolution that's on the floor, and if it's a close vote, the moderator will then make a decision as to going to the tickets for an actual written ballot. Okay?
Okay. All those in favor of the motion on the floor indicate by raising your hand.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the motion is, all those in favor of
The motion
doing a
on the-
hand vote.
All those in favor of doing a hand vote. Raise your hand.
Okay, that's pretty
Okay.
clear.
Motion carries with the majority. Opposition? Okay. Anybody opposed to a hand vote? Okay, 2. Motion carries with the majority. Okay. Okay. Now, we will we'll do the main vote with a hand vote. So all those in favor indicate by raising your hand now.
This is the main motion.
Okay. Thank you very much. All those opposed? Okay. Those abstained? Okay. Thank you. 1 abstention. Motion carries with majority. Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn? Okay. By Ray DeStefan and second by Alan Wall. Okay. We're adjourned. Thank you. All those in favor?